Well, Donald Trump backed down today. It doesn't happen every day. But because Donald Trump is actually, by far, the most cowardly president we have ever had, who's pretending to be a tough guy, he has backed down in his first presidency and now in this one more than any other president has done it. He backs down within a day of making decisions, pulls them back. Donald Trump backed down today, and no one was surprised. There are people who have to make their living based on knowing when Donald Trump is going to back down. They include the richest people in America and their day-to-day investment practitioners on Wall Street. Wall Street knows that Donald Trump is a pathological liar, which everyone knows. And Wall Street knows that Donald Trump doesn't understand anything about economics. Nothing. Wall Street has been listening to Donald Trump very carefully for years, and they've never once heard Donald Trump accurately describe what a tariff is. The truth of tariffs forced Donald Trump to back down today. Wall Street knows that Donald Trump lies every time he talks about tariffs. Everyone on Wall Street knows that no foreign country has ever paid an American tariff and never will. Wall Street knows the only people who pay Trump tariffs are people in the United States who pay for imported goods, like, say, coffee. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who has tasted the very small batch and very expensive coffee grown in Hawaii, not one drop of coffee you have swallowed in your life came from an American coffee bean. Every ounce of coffee you have swallowed came from another country. According to Donald Trump, the United States of America should be buying nothing from other countries. Tell that to the 211,000 people working in Starbucks just in the United States and the 361,000 people working in Starbucks worldwide. The coffee economy in the United States employs literally millions of people, all based on a product imported from other countries, imported from Africa, imported from South America. And this country could not survive a day without coffee, and we all know it. I could go on and on, listing examples of why international trade is a good and necessary thing. That is a fact that has been known since before the American colonies were settled, but Donald Trump doesn't know it. And so Wall Street knows that their job is to teach their slowest student, Donald Trump, whenever he goes dangerously too far on his illegal Trump tariff crusade. And the Trump tariffs are illegal because the Constitution puts Congress exclusively in charge of tariffs, just as Congress is exclusively in charge of income tax rates. But a provision that entered federal law during the Cold War provided the president with the authority to change individual tariffs only for national security reasons. The intention at the time was to allow the president to personally change tariffs in the event of war. No one writing that law thought that such tariffs could ever, under any circumstances, be imposed by the President of the United States on the most faithful and peaceful and supportive neighbor any country in the world has ever had, Canada. And so lost in the noise about the Trump tariffs is that very simple fact that they are illegal because none of them have the slightest relationship to national security. Wall Street did its job today and forced Donald Trump to back down from the most destructive aspect of his demented and illegal Trump tariffs on Canada and Mexico, the tariffs on automobiles entering the United States from Canada and Mexico. After 24 hours of that tariff being in place and probably not actually being paid by anyone, Donald Trump backed down, really backed down. And it was a classic Trump reversal, which he pretends is not a reversal, saying that he's going to pause the tariff on automobiles from Canada and Mexico for 30 days. And he will pause it again. He will back down again. That tariff will probably never go into effect because Donald Trump will back down, because Wall Street will once again convince Donald Trump of just how insane that idea is. Wall Street does that by reacting defensively to the Trump tariffs, which means a dramatic drop in the stock market as investors seek safety in the middle of the Trump economic chaos and they sell off stocks. That's what happened the first time Donald Trump had his tariffs ready to go against Canada and Mexico. The stock market collapsed, and Donald Trump was able to withstand about 2 hours of the collapse the day before the tariffs were supposed to go into effect. And by lunchtime, then, Donald Trump announced that he was going to pause those tariffs. He wasn't going to put them into effect the next day. He would pause them for 30 days. Then the stock market started to work its way back up the next day. This time around, the stock market thought they'd figured out Donald Trump. They believed Donald Trump would pull the same trick. He'd lie and threaten the tariffs, and then at the last minute, pause the tariffs. He would not impose the tariffs. But this time they guessed wrong. And the most economically ignorant president in history actually did impose those tariffs yesterday. And once again, the stock market crashed. In the middle of the trading day today, when the White House announced that Donald Trump would pause the tariffs on automobiles for 30 days, the stock market digested that news and started to go back up, to exactly no one's surprise. One of Donald Trump's favorite lies until last night was that the stock market just loves him and that the stock market was never higher than under his first Trump presidency. And that was a lie, of course. The stock market was higher under President Biden than it was under Donald Trump's presidency. In fact, the highest point the stock market has ever reached in its history was in Joe Biden's last month of the presidency. And last night, Donald Trump spoke for 99 minutes in an incoherent, rambling, lifeless, exhausting presentation with nothing designed to appeal to anyone who hasn't already voted for him. Presidents use addresses to Congress and to the nation to try to reach out to voters that they don't already have on their side. Not Donald Trump. In those rambling 99 minutes, Donald Trump never said the words stock market. When is the last time you heard Donald Trump give a long, self-congratulatory speech without telling you how great the Trump stock market is doing? Donald Trump was appearing, giving that speech on the night of a stock market crash caused by him, and he didn't say a word about the stock market in his address to Congress and the country, a country that was worried about the stock market. Not one word. The stock market crash was created by 1 day of the Trump tariffs being in effect. 1 day. And at the end of that 1 day, Donald Trump stood up in the House of Representatives and addressed the Congress and the nation, and he did not say one word about what happened that day because of his tariffs. He said nothing about the tariffs that went into effect yesterday. Nothing about that in his speech. The single biggest news of the day worldwide, created by Donald Trump, the Trump tariffs, not mentioned by Donald Trump in that speech last night because he was afraid of what he did. He was standing there last night terrified of what he did with those crazy tariffs. He was so afraid of what he did that he literally did not know what to say about it last night. He talked about tariffs generally, but not about what he had actually done yesterday. And here's one of the things he said about tariffs that actually proved his tariffs are illegal.
Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much.
It's supposed to be about national security. His tariffs are legally supposed to be about national security. That's the only way they can be legal. Donald Trump is too ignorant, of course, to know that he was admitting in that statement that his tariffs are illegal. And of course, by a little disturbance, he meant a stock market crash and increasing prices here in the United States. The biggest problem Donald Trump ran into yesterday when he finally decided to go forward with the stupidest economic idea ever advanced by a president of the United States is that the world stopped listening to Donald Trump about tariffs yesterday. And they started listening to someone else who actually knows what he's talking about.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake.
That man got Wall Street's attention yesterday, which made them even more worried about what was coming, because clearly the Canadian government has every intention of fighting Donald Trump's illegal tariffs in a way that will be very, very harmful to the economy of the United States. So harmful that the Wall Street Journal actually used the word Great Depression in a predictive headline of what could happen because of Donald Trump's trade war. The last Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s was actually caused by the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, the single stupidest economic idea of the 20th century in the United States, an idea that came from Republicans in Congress and that a Republican president went along with but did not actually champion to the extent that Donald Trump champions his own illegal tariffs. The problem for Donald Trump yesterday is that he empowered Justin Trudeau to speak directly to the American people as someone who not just knows what he's talking about, but sounds much more convincing than the blustering, lying President of the United States.
I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you.
Your government has chosen to do this to you. And of course, by your government, everyone in the United States and Canada and the world knows that he means Donald Trump. Donald Trump has chosen to do this to you. He chose, of course, action yesterday that would add $20,000 to the price of American cars, Dodges, Dodge Ram pickup trucks, Fords, American cars sold in the United States that in the course of their assembly often crossed the Canadian border through Michigan more than once in the complex manufacturing process we have now.
Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. They've chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items like groceries and gas, on major purchases like cars and homes, and everything in between. They've chosen to harm American national security, impeding access to the abundant critical minerals, energy, building materials, and fertilizers that we have and that the United States needs to grow and prosper. They've chosen to launch a trade war that will, first and foremost, harm American families.
Who are you going to believe? That guy? Or the guy who lies about who actually pays tariffs? Donald Trump backed down today to that guy. The Wall Street Journal knows that Americans pay the Trump tariffs. The Wall Street Journal knows that no one else can pay the Trump tariffs. Only Americans can pay the Trump tariffs, which is why the Wall Street Journal sees the potential for a Great Depression in what Donald Trump is doing.
The legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Let's look at the facts. Our border is already safe and secure. Far less than 1% of fentanyl flows and less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States comes from Canada.
43 pounds The total amount of fentanyl that crossed the Canadian border into the United States in a year is 43 pounds. You could bring that in the trunk of your car. You could hide it under this desk. That is not a national security threat to the United States of America. Prime Minister Trudeau pointed out that Donald Trump is violating his own law that he said was the greatest trade deal in history. Donald Trump initiated a renegotiation, a rewrite of the North American Free Trade Agreement during his first presidency. He renamed it the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement and signed it, as did Justin Trudeau and President of Mexico. Donald Trump said then it's the greatest trade deal ever negotiated, of course. That's the current trade law with Canada and Mexico right now, until Donald Trump decided to change it. Why would he have to change the greatest trade deal ever negotiated? He negotiated it. That's what he told us it was, the greatest trade deal ever negotiated. NBC News is reporting that Donald Trump is very upset that his mass deportation plan is not going well. It is not mass at all. NBC News reports a source familiar with Trump's thinking said the president is getting angry that more people are not being deported and that the message is being passed along to border czar Tom Homan. It's driving him nuts. They're not deporting more people, said a person familiar with Trump's thinking. Driving him nuts. So far, Donald Trump is on track to deport fewer people this year than President Obama did in a typical year. And so, to distract from his failed promise of mass deportations, Donald Trump apparently decided to play with tariffs and earn himself a prediction of a Great Depression from the Wall Street Journal. Republicans in the House of Representatives failed today in their desperate attempts to humiliate a group of Democratic mayors who they accused of not being eager enough to help Donald Trump deport people. If you watch the hearing, other than the embarrassing presence of New York's Mayor Eric Adams, who is still under indictment for bribery and was treated like a visiting dignitary by the Republicans, what was actually on display was an astonishing demonstration of Democratic Party competence and political talent in the city halls of Chicago, Denver, and Boston. Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu, who is herself a daughter of immigrants, was nursing her infant baby daughter during recesses in the hearing. She said this when she was asked about Trump's so-called border czar threatening to bring what he called hell to Boston.
Shame on him for lying about my city, for having the nerve to insult our police commissioner who has overseen the safest Boston's been in anyone's lifetime. Bring him here under oath and let's ask him some questions. I am here to make sure that the city of Boston is safe. Others may want to bring hell. We are here to bring peace to cities everywhere because our gun laws are the strongest in the nation, because our officers have built relationships over decades, and because all of our residents can trust that when they call 911 in the event of an emergency or to report a crime, help will come. This federal administration's approach is undermining that trust. This federal administration is making hardworking, tax-paying, God-fearing residents afraid to live their lives. A city that's scared is not a city that's safe. A land ruled by fear is not the land of the free. We are the cradle of democracy and the city of champions. We are all of these things not in spite of our immigrants, but because of them. The false narrative is that immigrants in general are criminals or immigrants in general cause all sorts of danger and harm. That is actually what is undermining safety in our communities. If you wanted to make us safe, pass gun reforms. Stop cutting Medicaid. Stop cutting cancer research. Stop cutting funds for veterans. That is what will make our city safe.
Like so many Boston Catholics, she had her ashes on her forehead today on Ash Wednesday. There were some words that were very conspicuously absent from Donald Trump's marathon speech last night, words like Medicare and Medicaid. Here's the last thing Donald Trump said about that before last night's speech.
Social Security won't be touched. Other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
No, won't be touched. He didn't say that last night. He said Social Security is full of fraud, which is a lie, and he literally never mentioned the existence of Medicare or Medicaid. Exactly a year ago in that same chamber, the President of the United States did mention Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security in a way that infuriated the Republicans sitting there, President Joe Biden, in the best televised State of the Union address I have ever seen, provoked loud objections from the Republicans when he accused them of wanting to cut those programs.
Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy.
You see that little head shaking no, sitting there behind the president? Speaker Mike Johnson shook his head no when Joe Biden said Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare.
We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh, no. You guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was. Well, that's good to hear. You're not going to cut another $2 trillion for the super wealthy. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share.
Best, quickest, most effective ad lib by a president in a State of the Union address. In that live moment of negotiating with the Republicans right there in front of everyone, Joe Biden saved Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare from Republican attacks for another year. There was no pledge last night from Donald Trump to not touch Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid because every Republican in the House of Representatives, except one, has already voted to, at minimum, dramatically cut Medicaid by $880 billion. They voted for that in a budget resolution that is a promise to vote for exactly those cuts in what they call a budget reconciliation bill when that bill comes through the House. It is impossible to achieve the trillions of dollars in budget cutting that Elon Musk is promising, that Donald Trump is promising, that the Republicans in the House and Senate are promising without the biggest cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in history. For Social Security, that means cutting the amounts of money you will receive from Social Security. For Medicare, that means increasing the amounts of copays you have to pay and reducing the amount of medical coverage that Medicare provides to you. For Medicaid, it means cutting the amount of health care coverage Medicaid provides and disqualifying current recipients and from continuing to receive Medicaid, which will mean throwing people out of nursing homes and shutting down most nursing homes in America because Medicaid is the primary payer for nursing homes in the United States of America. So, even if your family is actually paying the full price for your grandfather to be in a nursing home, that nursing home could be closed down when the Republicans cut $880 billion from Medicaid because most of the residents of that nursing home will get kicked out. And there won't be enough residents who can pay the full price to keep that nursing home operating. Our health care system is very complex, as in that example I just gave you. And Medicaid and Medicare support much more in our health care system than just the patients who are the direct beneficiaries of those programs. And Donald Trump doesn't know that. If the Republicans have their way, your local TV station will be covering the days when some of the oldest people in America are being kicked out of their nursing homes after the guy who promised Sean Hannity he wouldn't touch Medicaid rips Medicaid coverage away from the poorest people in this country and the oldest people in this country. And that is the plan. And that's why Donald Trump did not dare to say the word Medicaid last night. That's why Republican members of the House of Representatives who have already voted for those Medicaid cuts have been told by the congressman in charge of funding congressional campaigns to stop doing town hall meetings where voters can voice their fears about what's going to happen at their local nursing homes. If you're one of the people, or if your grandmother is one of the people who gets kicked out of her nursing home because of Donald Trump and the Republican Congress, you're going to suffer something even worse than the Great Depression the Wall Street Journal is predicting if Donald Trump doesn't continue to back down.